to revamp them and to host them quarterly here in this room. So the next meeting we'll have will be in January, and we're hoping to do it the first Monday of the month. So with that, I'm just going to go through the agenda. So I'm Linda Eisenberg. I'm the director of DPZ. I've been in this role for a little more than a year now. I've probably met you all at some NBIA or just coming into our offices for various projects that you all are working on and have meetings about some of the things that you're doing. So the new focus, as I said, of these meetings is to really present to you what we're doing, not only in DPZ, but in other divisions and departments within Howard County. So today's agenda, toward the end, we'll do a round robin with the different divisions and departments that are listed in item number 4 below. But we really wanted to have this meeting revamp and have a new focus on bringing to you some of the things that we're working on. For today's presentations, we're going to be talking about forest conservation law that went into effect in July of 2024. Anthony Cataldo from DLD has a presentation about what some of the changes were and how we're implementing that in Howard County. We'll be going over our new complete streets policy that was recently adopted. And then we're going to go over some new fee structures. I'm sure many of you all have seen and have paid the new fees. I'm just going to walk through a little bit about what those fees are and why they've increased over the years or increased this year. And then we'll wrap up with our Project Docs software. We've had some major changes to Project Docs and how it works, and how we have revamped our Project Docs for red line submissions now, as well as alternative compliance and zoning. So again, as I said, these will be regularly scheduled meetings. The idea is to have them quarterly. Again, as I said, the first Monday of the month from this 2 to 4 p.m. time frame will be in person and online. And so Lisa's actually recording it too. So for those that haven't been able to attend, it will be recorded up on our website, as well as those that want to log in and tune today and that didn't have the ability to come in. This is not the best room. We don't really have a lot of bigger facilities. Each time this is growing, then we may look to host this at another location, like the Plus Center in Columbia. And we'll be talking about, what is happening in the county that's affecting you all in the development community. And then I would also say any topics of interest from you as the developer community. If there's something you want us to bring to you, if you have questions about things that aren't project specific, but more generally county engagement, please reach out to us and let us know what you want to hear about. We'd be happy to research it and bring it to you as a topic of interest. Okay, so with that, I'm just going to jump into our next agenda item. I'm going to skip over forest time complete streets and go into the new fee structure, since that happens to be on the presentation I've prepared, and then we'll move back to forest conservation. So I just wanted to bring to your attention, as you already know, we increased our fees this year in several areas. One of the most noticeable changes are to our zoning fees. We have not changed our fees in decades in many of our areas, zoning being one of them. And this wasn't a DPZ effort. This was a county budget and management effort to get us as a county across all departments and divisions closer to 100% cost recovery. And we know 100% cost recovery is, something that we would like to achieve, but it's not always practical and feasible, and really shouldn't be done anyway to some extent. So what budget and management did is they hired an outside consulting firm to come in and review all the fees that we charge in Department of Planning and Zoning. For zoning particularly, they reviewed 52 various fees, and those fees for the most part are flat fees. They're not indexed with any size of a property. They're really priced according to the complexity of what the proposal is that's being put forward for the zoning division. So out of these 52 various fees, 41 fees increased. And that seems like a lot, but the fees in many cases were so nominal to begin with. It's not like they went from like $300 to $3,000. Many of the fees might have gone from like 25 to 50 or 100 to 250. So nominal fees for the different processes that were being charged. 10 of the fees were increased for 100% cost recovery. And what the consultant did was look at the man hours it took to complete a certain type of task, and figured out based on the level of type of planner that was working on it, what a general rule would be for what 100% cost recovery would be. So 10 of those really made sense to meet the 100% cost recovery. So those were increased to that. The other 31 of the 52 fees that were increased were less than 100% cost recovery, and really kind of went down to what made sense for today to charge. We didn't want to make things so burdensome, especially for the private property owner, to have to, meet, thousands of dollars in fees for adding on a garage to their home or putting on a carport or a driveway or whatever it may have you. We decided to kind of review it and look at what should be applicable for that particular fee and increase it to an area that made sense and wouldn't be too onerous on a private property owner. So those fees, if you haven't already checked them out, under the land development and zoning fees, for fiscal year 2025. We don't anticipate any fee changes for the next fiscal year, starting next July 1. This was a one and done for right now. Can't say fees won't change in the future, but as of right now, we're not going to be looking at any other fees from the zoning division for increase. The next fees that you probably saw the largest percentage increase were the engineering fees. And two things were done here is that we looked at projects, really in terms of the unit price index. As you all know, when you all do your different fee structures for the different clients, the cost we were using were really from like 1991 for the most part. So if you put in, a new drainage and whatever the components are that you needed for that drainage structure were based on what the costs were in 1991 and also the materials for 1991. So what we did was we updated the materials listing to the commensurate with the materials that are available in 2024 and what those prices are for 2024. Again, we don't anticipate adjusting these annually. It'll be on an as needed basis, but we did bring those costs up to today's pricing. And as you all know, because you're in the building community, that prices went up for a lot of things. So this did two things. It indexed our prices for what we take for our bonding and surety to be in more of today's dollars. Without, God forbid, anything should happen to a project and there's a default, the county would not be responsible for that much more than the cost of the actual project, because we were, again, costing things on 1991, 30 years later, much different pricing. And so we were being left to hold the bag for a lot more money. And that wasn't necessarily fair across the board. So just really trying to make sure that things are commensurate with where we are today. The other thing that we did was we adjusted our red line costs. So we applied the same unit price index to red lines for costs of over $4,000, and then maintained a flat fee for projects that were $4,000 and under to that $250 red line revision cost. And again, all the engineering unit costs can be found under engineering unit cost FY25. And so I think we've had several projects come in under the new fee structure. And then finally, DLD fees did not increase at all. So that's a good thing. So the specific fees that we charge per sheet, those fees did not change at all. So really the two biggest changes were within the zoning and all the things that come along with zoning, your signs and things like that increased, and just the engineering fees. So any other questions before I hand it over to Anthony for forest conservation? Yes.
Are we clear now on red lines, what we're going to charge for? Because you're taking a stormwater management that previously existed, revising it. There was some confusion over trying to charge for all of it, not charging for some of it.
Do you want to answer that, Chad?
I'm going to have a nice long talk in a few minutes. Just about that. You guys can shoot them at me.
Okay.
Great.
All right, there you go. All right, anyone else? Okay. Well, with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen and invite Anthony to go ahead and present on forest conservation and what's changed.
Okay.
Okay.
Because it was just going to be words.
Yeah, okay. Just words, it's fine. There you go.
So Howard County had to update its forest conservation laws in response to SB 526 and then House Bill 1511. They're very short order. So what we did in response to those pieces, we submitted back in September 2023, we submitted our forest conservation plan to the state as part of the state bill to continue using our current forest conservation law as a more restrictive version of state law. And that, as my understanding, is still under review. So we haven't had any changes requested by the state for that. Rather than try to take our current law, which has not been formally adopted by the state, and then modify it to meet the items in House Bill 1511, we opted to implement the law via policy, which did a couple of things for us. One, it allowed us to start to the best of our ability implementing the required pieces of law change as part of those actions. It also gave the state some time to provide us some guidance on some pieces that were a lot less described in the law update. And ultimately, this will allow us to, in the future, come through with more of a comprehensive package of anything that would need to be updated for forest conservation, either modifications to our current law based on state review, and or to be able to fold in additional guidance from the state on the items that were most recently adjusted. So, as if you're not aware, I think you probably all are, but you're working on plans that are in process. The policy memo that we have is up on our website. It really went through, we worked through the Office of Law to try to identify the pieces that were required to be done right now. The main aspects were the solar piece, the reinstitution of mitigation banks, the change in the priority forest retention area pieces, and then the fourth major piece was the creating the findings for the justifications of the clearing the priority forest conservation areas. So I could go through just reading the policy, or I could try to answer questions. We thought this was the best option that we had to try to roll out quickly. A reminder for the solar piece, it's for the afforestation obligation only. It's not a full exemption from forest conservation. The mitigation bank pieces are fairly straightforward in terms of what can or can't be created. The biggest change, I think, from a plan processing perspective were the addition of the additional priority areas and then the justifications that need to be addressed as part of that. Rather than create an entirely new process for plans to go through to try to fulfill this obligation in the new law, we opted to, as the policy mentions, keep it as part of the sort of overall forest conservation plan. So the justifications would come in for those parts that grandfather and have to meet the new obligation. The justification would come in as part of the forest conservation plan, so as part of the actual sheets. Those justifications would be listed. We would then review those through our sort of standard plan review process. So we have brought in recreation and parks, community sustainability, as well as RCD and DLT staff to begin looking at the specific criteria for the impacts to those priority retention areas to gather their feedback through PDOC, so they're learning how to put comments in. And then to meet that state obligation, we will be sort of commenting on and working with you through the plan review process to update those justifications as needed. And then the signature on those sheets would, we believe at this point, meet the state's requirement for the new impacts there. So it's a little confusing for some of our state agencies who are still trying to sort of learn the process. So I ask for a little bit of your patience if there are sort of some comments coming through that may or may not sort of fully make sense when you're trying to bring them on board into PDOC's world. We're all trying to work together to sort of, to the best of our ability, make sure that we're meeting the requirements. But yeah, the stream buffers piece moving to 100 feet. Our definition for suitable interior dwelling, forest for interior dwelling species, we took a sort of first pass of what we believe that to be. Again, waiting on a bit more guidance from the state, but at this point, at least we're operating under something. Our tiers in the watershed get updated as needed. And then the forest and urban areas, that's another piece where we went through and tried to find sort of the most comparable item that we have done now or have done it in past planning efforts to use as the threshold. But that's one of the items that, again, there might be additional guidance from the state on as they begin to work through some of their sort of detailed reviews. Yes, I'm happy to try to answer questions to the best of my ability. The grandfathering piece, one second. The grandfathering piece is we're operating under our standard grandfathering, where projects that met the prior thresholds would be original or the older forest conservation plan, and anything that was in process that did not meet one of those thresholds would have to meet the new state regulations. And so that's why some of those comments are coming. PDOT's seemingly at the tail end of a project, but we're following through the same grandfathering that we had previously.
You just answered my question.
Oh, okay, great. One down. Again, I try to answer questions the best that I can, but that's really where we're at. We try to make the policy readable, legible, understanding that there are likely more changes to come, but trying to work together to find a reasonable path forward.
Is there a time frame to physically revamp it?
So unofficially, we would probably wait until closer to the 2026 rollout of the next pieces. So the items that were not, the items that were postponed under House Bill 1511, I think have a July 1st, 2026 date. So I would imagine around that time period, where we'd be looking to fold in all the guidance and feedback we received from the state between now and then, and anything else that may or may not need changes.
Thanks.
And that's part of the uncertainty too, is because of how the state rolled this out, you know, should we codify, should we not codify, should we let the state law preempt local land use authority and then just develop a policy? That's kind of where we ended up because of that, because of the uncertainty of where this will finally land from the state. We were going to hold off codifying anything until that point in time. And I think going back to what Anthony said earlier, you know, the state requirement originally was to present something to the state in September of 2023. And then the state would review your local law to see how well it adhered to the state law. So, you know, after we submitted that, I think the state's kind of catching up to their own laws. So we have not yet heard back from them in the direction that they're moving in with even approving our current interpretation, how we've codified the current land use, the current forest conservation law. So that's why we're just a little bit kind of in this little bit of a limbo time period until we have full guidance from them.
And I don't know if you all know Daniel Coy, who took over from Marion Hennessy. He's, to Linda's point, I think, led us to believe they're playing catch up and trying to work more expeditiously. I think they're trying to come in with not policy, but new information before their 2025 deadline for some of their items. So I think they're trying to push towards the end of this year to get us some sort of feedback on pieces. But for what it's worth, yeah, the idea of trying to codify something now with all the information seems more laborious and painful. And so we have to do that policy.
Did I comprehend you correctly when you said something about you're waiting for the state to see if the things that we have done is sufficient for them? When is that time frame? When should we hear it back?
That's what we're saying. We don't know yet. The hope is,
Yeah, ideally by the end of the year.
end of the year. I think it's in December, they may have some feedback and guidance as we just move on.
Okay. In your experience, how long does it typically take them to get back to us?
You know, it's all new people at the state level since the new administration took over, so it's really hard to determine when they'll get back to us. There's a lot of new players, so we're just trying to work through the process with them. Yeah. Anthony, we're not just sitting through 11 for 30 minutes.
Yeah, the presentation would have been kind of.
That's a this group. What they came for. All right, so then with that, I'm gonna toss it to Chad Edmondson, who's going to talk to you about complete streets and our new complete streets policy, and David Cookson from Office of Transportation.
So this is actually a duo,
Yeah.
and I'm like the opening band for the main. Lisa, do you have, no?
I do.
Oh, you do? Okay, great. So Complete Streets, it's been enacted, it's been around for about a year. You guys have been dealing with it. I often hear from folks, how do I get my plans through faster? I hear that a lot. So meeting Complete Streets would really help. And what do I mean by that? Complete Streets means heads, bikes, and cars. We're all comfortable with the cars, doing the APFO, making sure we have level of service D or better. But now we have to look at peds and bikes. There is not a road out there today that meets Complete Streets. And I think every one of you sitting here, seeing everybody's faces, heard me at one time or another say, when you submit your first plan, you might as well either come in with a waiver or open the book to that particular cross section and show it on your plans, even at the ECP. Because we're making comments, and you all get them, saying, what about your 10-foot path? What about your bike lane? Because that's impervious area, and that sets up stormwater management, which relates all the way back to ECP, which is first plan. So if you're not going to meet the typical section, then submit that waiver with the sketch or the SDP, whatever your first plan is. You can't submit it with the ECP, but you can submit it with your first subdivision plan. If you don't, you've automatically created another ramp. So all the developers sitting in here, you heard it, I'm telling you, I'm saying it, we see it over and over. If you do it the first time, I bet you'll save a ramp. So that's my opening statement to kind of lead off a little bit. Dave, you want to take over? And I'm going to stand here and you can fire questions back. But Dave's got more of the detailed information for Complete Streets and the why behind it.
Yeah, so if we could just jump to the next slide. So I'm going to cover sort of three major things, sort of, how we got here, what sort of expectations we have, and you guys can do a little bit more into details into the weeds and things like that. So obviously, this Complete Streets project that we've been working on for a couple of years now is part of the originated out of the approval of the Complete Streets policy. And there are a whole series of action items that the county has done over the last couple of years to implement that policy. And all those action items are actually now completed. Updating the design manual. So everybody's probably seen the different road sections that were developed out of that. Different guidance on incorporating equity into projects in the county. Community engagement plans, a whole series of actions. And one of those actions, of course, is the street selection guidance and things like that. So if we could just jump to the first one, which is the multimodal checklist, the multimodal study checklist. Can you jump to the next slide, Lisa? So obviously, traditionally, we've just had the level of service. That was the thing that people have been putting studies in and actually measuring and mitigating against. So that in the design manual now, there's a requirement to do the multimodal transportation studies checklist. It's a requirement to just do the study. You're not being required to implement this. So it's been in place since 2022. We've had lots of projects coming through. I think most people are doing really well on submitting this. Basically, it's 5 peak hour trips or below. You just have to go through the administrative steps of checking off and saying we don't meet the requirement. And then if it's above 5, the form really guides everybody through and how to do it. And it can be separate. It can be within the traffic study or separate. We prefer it as a separate document, and that gets uploaded to PDOTs. So most projects that we're getting now, that task is being completed. So the guidelines are on the website, and it's very easy to walk yourself through it. And there's a guidance document at the end of this presentation to provide a little bit more information on how to do it. And then Chris Etoff, our bike and ped planner, so he's available as a resource to help everybody walk through that as well. So please feel free to give him a call or an email if you have any sort of issues or questions about this. He's the one that really got involved in putting it all together for us. So that's one of the requirements that's coming through on the Complete Streets initiative now. So Lisa, can we jump to the next slide? So this is an example of one. So within that, how the system works, there's an interactive map. You can push, indicate the parcel that your project is on, and it will pull up the schools and all the public amenities that are sort of incorporated into the requirement to map out routes to. So we've made it quite easy for you to do. And so an example right here is at the project on Gray Rock, which is just an example. You go through the system and you're mapping out connections to different community destinations, schools, libraries, and community centers. Those are the typical types of things that you're going to be needed to map out connections to and bring up to the current standard, the LTS standards, what we're looking for. And that's all sort of explained in the document. So if you could jump on to the next slide, please. So the next thing is street selection as part of projects. So as part of this project, we've come up with a street selection guidance document, and it walks everybody through a flow where you can make decision points on different types of projects and different types of roads and where it would lead you to. And Chad's going to point out one of the sort of key critical ones right at the beginning when he comes back and discusses this in a little bit more detail. So you're identifying the street type in front of the development, and within that document, it provides the right of way, if it's required sidewalks, side paths. Those are the typical requirements that would guide that are linked to the particular street type. So, as I said, this is sort of very much an overview of where we are in this. So really following the guidelines and the workflow really gets you to where you need to be in terms of making a street selection. Next slide, please. So the third thing that we wanted to bring up today was something we haven't really brought up with any of the members of the development community. So now is providing information in the native format for traffic studies. It's not, we haven't been asking for this, but it's in the design manual as a requirement for when your final traffic study is completed. It's providing that basic data information to the county. So this is our first stab at doing this. So one of the discussion points we wanted to put out to all the engineers and developers in here, what's the best format based on your experience that you would be able to get to us? And I think there's some folks that work in Montgomery County where it's a similar requirement. So we don't necessarily need to have a whole discussion about it today, but if people have ideas on like what they think is the best format and to provide this information to the county, we really appreciate that feedback. And as I mentioned at the beginning, so these are the resources around this, the guidelines and documents that we discussed today. In the multimodal studies checklist, the example, modulated training as well, chapters 4 and 5 on the multimodal study, and also a link to a document that provides a street selection guidance document. Matt, you want to jump in now?
Lisa, can you go back 2 clicks? So this slide, she's about to put this slide right here is the meat and potatoes of everything. So the engineers, you guys have been working with this for a while. Developer folks here, I don't know if you've been looking at it or not, but this flow chart right here is like, it's awesome. I mean, I have yet to have anybody call in where it doesn't work and give you your answer besides one situation, and that engineer is not sitting here today. The developer's sitting here, but the engineer is not sitting here. This chart over here, I know you all really can't see it, but this is the cross section for every one of our roads broken down into the widths of the sidewalks, the pathways, you name it, it's all there. That's the road that you're going to build. But this one goes through, you just look at your ADT, you look at what's on each side of the road. in a sense, you're looking at your zoning, and you end up in one of these bullets, it says, you know, you're a neighborhood street to, then you have options, will you build a pathway for the bikes, or are you building a wider lane for dedicated to, bikes? Something like that as an example. But if you walk through this, unless you're out west, the one particular example, you were out west and you end up in this little blue box over here in the corner, where it says, come see us. So, you know, you kind of thought you'd be there, but you're really not. It's kind of an unusual circumstance because you're out west in I'll call it a business district out there. So it's very limited to where you're gonna meet that situation. But, you know, we met with the developer, we talked about it. I think we came up with a little bit of a resolution. And I think they're moving forward on it. But this really is, these two pieces of that slide is the meat and potatoes of complete streets. Just remember, we're looking at all three modes. I'm gonna stop there because there's a lot to handle. Bruce, I'm gonna get back to you on your first question.
That's all right, no problem.
But any questions?
Just want to elaborate, you said you wanted the multimodal study separate, just explain that a little bit more.
Well, right now, some of them sometimes they're embedded within the larger traffic study.
Right, so you don't like.
Ideally, it would be separate.
Does that mean it's two separate studies, or the traffic engineer just has to split it up?
Yeah, well, the way it's set up, that form now really guides everybody through outputting a very discrete document. So the way we're thinking about it, if you're doing it through the document that we provided and the way that we're doing it, you're ending up with a separate PDF that is
Or
easily.
some other Excel or Word format?
Um,
I'm teasing.
Yeah, and the map that was up there, the Google map that was
Yeah.
up there, that's really what it looks like. And if, as Dave said, if you're under 5 peak hour trips, you know, the first sentence in that checklist, it asks, are you under 5? You go, yeah, well, you're done at that point, you know, because that tells us it's a small site, you're not generating enough trips. So you move on. Yeah, there it is. You move on. Otherwise, you're putting together a little plan for the county to use for future improvements, you know, to get people to those locations as at a level of service, LTS, I call it level of service, LTS, meeting those requirements for peds or bikes. So, but it works out better to be separate as opposed to putting it into a 100-page APF roadmap.
Because we're really using it at this point as a sort of to provide planning guidance and advice as we're sort of updating our master plans. It's like looking at where there's opportunities and sort of constraints that we aren't necessarily able to grab out of our regular planning process. Really trying to let as much information from the outside as we can to be able to input into our various planning projects and implementation.
Just naive about it, but is the traffic guys doing that, or is that somebody else? Doing the
Normally, it's the traffic engineers that are doing this. So if you talk to your traffic engineers and your
No,
consultants,
that's what I wanted to know.
I'm curious because it sounds like it's based on the location maybe and the type of street that ends up being how much flow with this traffic study. But is there any type of like guidance within there that requires 1 mile from an elementary school, there must be a sidewalk that a kid can go on because they're a walker? Can they walk on the sidewalk?
Dave, you want to?
Yes, so
there is.
the tool, when you go into the tool, you click on your development project, your parcel that you're working on or the area that you're working on. So it'll pull up the number of like schools within the catchment area that the study asked you to look at. And then you're doing the review, like, is there a sidewalk or isn't there a sidewalk? Then you're sketching in those improvements that you would need to do to be able to get to those locations.
Got it.
Yeah.
Helpful, thank you.
This is probably a good example right here.
Mhm.
At the development project in blue. Is a school system ever going to allow elementary school kids to walk to Northfield Elementary School down through the woods and in the park and all the secluded areas?
What was the policy decisions on the school? I mean, you're really working towards to build up infrastructure towards bringing new destinations. And school children aren't the only users of pathways and sidewalks to get to school. So community schools, a community resource, they use it all different hours. So that for the school system, that might be a policy choice on like how they get their kids to schools and where they allow, where they say it's okay for them to walk or not okay to walk. But we're also looking at, community destinations that are used by all sorts of different people.
There's a good example though, States at Tassau Park, right at the end of Route 99, large development. They went on and built a pathway, sidewalk along 99, put guardrail up. And I happen to drive by it every morning coming here. But there's also a bridge that takes you over to the stream and brings you to the back of the school. So they actually built both methods to get there. But you're right, the school wants them to come to the front door and get checked in, not wander through the little softball field or whatever, and then come in and back door. So, but they did build both. So I imagine both are being, but I see the one on 99 being used all the time.
And I get it when it's on a road, but in these convoluted areas, we pioneered walking to school with Columbia in the 1960s. And nobody goes on those hug and mugs now, unless they're selling drugs. So the concept is great, but from a practical standpoint, it doesn't work in 2020. So the other thing is there any consideration when you're in the RC district and you've got 30,000 acres that you can't do a major subdivision and your farm may have 1,000 foot of frontage along the road and you're going to be one lot, two lots. You got to improve 1,000 feet of road. That makes no sense. There's no rational relationship between the impact of two lots and the cost of the improvements. Nobody has time to fight. They ask for the alternative compliance. Sometimes they don't get it and it just kills the project.
So I'll touch on that. With APFO piggybacking, most of you know that there are some language in the subdivision regs as far as frontage improvements. It's kind of convoluted with waiving sidewalk versus waiving frontage. But if you build a sidewalk, then you got to put curb and gutter because you got to protect the people on the sidewalk. And those two sets of languages are in two different books. So not part of APFO, but piggybacking with it, with the next change to the subregs, we are going to address that because along with APFO, it goes hand in hand. That is, for a minor sub, something that takes a couple of rounds because you have to meet these improvements or get a waiver. If you do a waiver, it goes to our partners down in DPW and you're just sitting there waiting going, are they going to make us build it? Do they have a place to put it? How much are they going to make us build? And it almost always turns into a couple meetings to get to that point. So we're going to try to separate the language. And if I have it my way, I'm going to try to get it into our design manual. So it is here. Hopefully the subregs will say you must build your frontage improvements and they will look like what's in complete streets. Then you come to the subregs and then we work through what you can get a waiver for or what you can't. But then we've at least narrowed it down to two divisions or organizations here. So, and you're right, there's situations where you're a one lot, maybe the lot even exists today. And there's a great back and forth of, can we build all these frontage improvements for a one lot STP for, Mr. and Mrs. Smith who wants to just build a house in the driveway. They don't have a contractor that's going to do curb, gutter, sidewalk, possible storm drainage and everything else. So it's one that we're going to be talking about very shortly, kind of piggybacking with API.
And as you know, have entered into contracts, people to put their land in agricultural preservation, reserving a child lot. And you're sitting here 20 years later trying to create the child lot and told that they have relocate poles, widen the road, put in sidewalks, bike paths, that will never go to anything, because the rest of it can't be subdivided.
I don't have any more of an answer on that. Anybody else? And I'll be back up. I'm Frank, but Bruce.
Must be a complicated answer.
All right, so next up, James. to talk about our project docs and the changes that have, been made this past summer that launched in July of this year.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Oh, thanks. I expected that. That is the logical next step there. We'll see how this goes. I kind of built animations into this and I'm not in control of that. So I'm just gonna have to, yeah, we'll do finger guns. Okay, so time to talk about everybody's favorite electronic plan submission software for Howard County government, Project Docs. We've been making some changes to the system over the last year and a half, and there are some more that are coming down the pike soon. So I'm just gonna go over that. Also, hopefully answer any questions that you have about that. I think it's written. So highlights, and I will get into more details about these individually. We've got a dedicated Project Docs webpage on the county website now. That's very exciting. There's an applicant portal component to Project Docs now, which gives the applicant more interactivity with Project Docs, which is, I'm sure, what everybody wanted, is to just do even more stuff within Project Docs. We also have a wealth of materials that are available there. And additionally, some of our various processes that formerly were not in Project Docs or were using Project Docs in a limited fashion are now there or more fully integrated. Yeah. Okay, so here is the aforementioned Project Docs webpage. This is on the county website, and this is sort of meant to be a one-stop shop for all things Project Docs. You know, when we have updates to provide, they're going to be posted here. There's also a lot of helpful content, probably less so for experienced users, but this is targeted for folks who are going to be new to the system and not as familiar with Project Docs. So we have a number of different user guides that are there. And with our next update, actually, which will be taking place in October, we're going to have a host of different videos that actually walk you through the different components of Project Docs. So when you're uploading, resubmitting, if you're responding to comments and review, it'll be a little bit easier to sort of find that information and just quickly observe how that's done. So I encourage everybody to check that out, especially if you're onboarding anybody new that hasn't used the system before. It's a really good resource. So yeah, next. Okay, so right here is a view of the home screen for applicants. And what this is it's sort of a window into the various submissions that you have. So you could have applications that you've started, but some of the information is pending, so you haven't submitted them yet. You can easily access them right here. You can access your former applications as well. So not just the plan itself, but the actual forms that you submitted are all going to be accessible here as well. And you can just view more easily all of the different tasks and projects that you are a part of. Here is, okay, we did some school. That was actually good timing. So you can just do that again. All right, so here is the services screen, and this is very important. If you're ever uncertain about where do I go to submit an application, it is the services screen. There's a button that's in the top left corner of the portal that will take you there. And here you're going to have a number of different selections. So you can go straight into Project Docs, just get that traditional Project Docs view, access your projects. Or if you're submitting an application, this is where you're going to do it. We have a number of different forms that are on here now. But in addition to submitting applications, if you need to make corrections to an application that you have already submitted, you can do that here if you click I'll just say clicking off point as well. It's redundant. So you can see here, update button. So use that, you identify the application you're trying to update. It's going to load that information for you and you can make whatever edits are needed. Next one. All right, and here is an example of one of the forms in Project Docs now. So we've gotten rid of the external forms that you used to access via a link on our webpage. Those aren't going to work anymore. So if you have those bookmarked, and that's typically what you do when you're submitting an F plan or whatever, it's not going to work anymore. Should redirect you to Project Docs, but what you're going to need to do now is use that services screen that we just showed, get the plan typed, or other form that you're trying to submit, and then you're going to fill out all of the information here. And what's nice is this is a little bit more of a streamlined process than before. There were a lot of fields that over the years we no longer required, but the forms just still had those there. So this is just the information that we need now. It's a little bit quicker to get through, and there were some improvements as well to just how you interact with the forms. Click. So you can see here, when you're inputting the applicant information, you can just check a box and it's going to auto-complete those fields based on who the logged in user is. So that saves you a little bit of time. And additionally, all of the, or at least most of the items that you're going to need for your submission, checklists and information about fees and whatnot, that can be found here as well. That information is on the Project Docs web page that we have. But additionally, that information is right here in case you need to refer to it as you're filling out the forms. Next. Okay, so a couple other things. Red lines and zoning are now both in Project Docs. So that's exciting. Alternative compliance before, if you were submitting waiver petitions, that information would be stored in Project Docs, like some of the forms and correspondences, but it didn't have the integrated system of automatic notifications and the assignment of tasks and the back and forth that you can have more easily between reviewers and applicants. So now it actually has that structure to the alternative compliance process, which should help things get through a bit more quickly and smoothly. We've also added all of the electronic signature components for the different plans that require that. So that all gets handled through Project Docs. And once more, when you have the automation of notifications that go out and you instantaneously know when the previous person's task has been completed, it just helps everything to move a bit more swiftly. Additionally, over the last year or so, we've updated the actual software that we're using. And we migrated everything from our on-premise servers to a cloud-based system. So that just helps things to be a little bit easier when we're trying to retrieve them. Okay, next big thing to be aware of is we are updating our software one more time. And this should be the last really painful update we do. We're going to version 9.2 or 9.4 from 9.2. And that's going to require the system to be offline for 24 hours, potentially longer. So do plan accordingly for that. It's going to go down on the evening of October 1st. And it should be back up by the morning of October 3rd. We can't guarantee that because this is a very extensive process that's taking place. And once it's done, future updates are no longer going to require downtime. They're going to be performed in the background. It's not going to take the site offline and cause quite as many disruptions as it does right now. So at least we have that to look forward to. A really great thing is there will no longer be a Brava viewer. So there is going to be a single viewer, and it's going to be browser agnostic. So whether you're using Edge, whether you're using Chrome, It's going to be a single viewer that does not require the downloading of components, so you never have to upload the components. There's going to be no browser server to crash and cause problems. So that's one thing that we're certainly looking forward to as well. We're also going to have the ability to integrate project docs with Power BI for creating some dashboards and visualizations that will hopefully provide a bit more information regarding the plan review process and helping to visualize, life cycles of plans and whatnot. Additionally, I should note a couple of the changes that were made recently that are important to keep in mind are drawings. Most people submit them as PDFs. We're now requiring that because there were a few who would submit DWGs and different CAD files, and those were just significantly more complex and larger files that would kind of jam up the system at times. So now we require PDFs. The other thing is the way in which we conduct review and you respond to that is different. Within the system now, there is a reviews tab, and it's accessible through the individual project itself. There's a reviews tab, just like there's a files tab and an information tab. And it's also accessible from within the task window that you have when you are doing a revise and resubmit task. And this provides sort of a chart of the different comments, including the change marks that the reviewers have made on your drawings. And you can respond to them directly there. There's a comment box for each one of those items. And they also link you to the change marks within the drawings as well. But we no longer have the ability for applicants to post their own change marks or pull up a change mark within a drawing and reply to that change mark, or submit a document that is their response. It's now a consistent process that we can use for all of our different plan types. So it should help things to be a bit more organized. It should be easier then for folks to get through that review and response process. So anyone have any questions then about the update process itself, about the system itself? I don't know a whole lot when it comes to the individual plans and projects and requirements of those, but I do deal with the technical stuff. All right, super.
One question.
There we
So
go.
are other jurisdictions already on 9.4 and do they have experience with it?
It actually just got rolled out over the last week.
Okay.
So we just installed it into our test environment. We sort of have a sandbox environment where various changes and whatnot, we can make sort of in this safe environment that doesn't impact the production environment, which is what you all interact with. And so we have that there now so that we can sort of beta test it and make sure it's stable and that everything is working properly over the next few weeks before we're scheduled to actually then implement it in our live environment. There are some jurisdictions who went straight to it, but they're very few, and there's not a lot of feedback right now about how that's going. So, but we were taking some time to just test it before we jump right in with it.
Good. And it sounds like we get all these notices about downtime project. I assume this is in theory going to help with some of that.
Yeah, like I was noting with this, once 9.4 is done, there's no longer going to be downtime needed when we have to do things like install patches or update versions. So it should cut down significantly on those types of delays. All right, anything else? Thank you.
Thank you, James. Appreciate it.
All right, so let's just go around. I want to introduce you to the DPZ team. I don't know how many of you met everyone. We've had a lot of changes over the last few years. So I'm just going to take a minute to recognize some people here, and then we're going to do a round robin through the different divisions and departments that are here. So from our director's office, Jessica Bella is in charge of the zoning unit and the research unit as well. So you probably have spoken with her, emailed through her for a lot of zoning questions and concerns. We have Mary Kendall, who is the Deputy Director of Planning and Zoning. and she oversees resource conservation in the Department of the Community Planning. So she and her team were instrumental in Hokobai design. And then underneath Mary is Beth Burgess from our Resource Conservation Division. Beth is responsible for our forest comp policy. When we used to have Susan Overstreet, I don't know if any of you remember her. She's only been gone a few months, but she was really instrumental in our Green Neighborhoods program, helping us with our forest conservation policy. Beth and her team also run Historic Preservation Commission, which you all have probably been to at some point in your career here, putting plans through Howard County, as well as our land preservation programs that we have within the county. And then Kristen runs our Route 1 program. She is part of, she's the bureau chief of the Division of Comprehensive Community Planning, Hokobai Design, does Route 1 corridor, our sustainable community. She's working on the Gateway master plan right now. So we've got a lot of exciting things happening. Anthony Cataldo from our Division of Land Development, and currently we're working on a landscape manual update. We haven't updated that in quite some time, so undertaking that project now. Jeff Bronow from our research division, and he is all things schools and adequate public facilities, cooperative forecasting, demographic information. So I'm actually going to have them speak to you for a few minutes about some things that are happening within their divisions. And then I'll introduce some folks from DIL, PTW, and CID that are here. So we have, let's see, Bob Francis here. Bob Francis is here from DIL, as well as Don Mock is here. And then do we have any more from Construction Inspection Division? I wasn't sure if they were able to make it. No, so not today. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kristen just to inform you some updates happening within her division.
Hi, everyone. I probably have the least access to you all, but it's good for you to know kind of what we're working on. So we do long-term planning projects. We mostly work with residents, community associations, property owners, businesses, electeds, county governments, you all in here, government staffers, state agencies, and adjacent communities. So that's what kind of we did. If you haven't seen me. We're in charge of the long-range planning projects. So general plan, like Linda just mentioned, our general plan, Hokobai Design, was adopted last fall in 2023. And so we're working on general plan implementation right now. So let's see. The next thing that was mentioned by Linda, you did a great job. You did our job. The Gateway Master Plan is staff's working on, we have a public meeting coming up next Wednesday to discuss master plan options for the redevelopment of Gateway. So that's going on, and we hope that if you don't have this in your calendar, if you have any interest in the Gateway area, please put it down. It's 2:30 to 4:30 on the 18th is our first session, and 5:30 to 7:30 is our second session on the 18th. So September 18th. And that's to be held at the East Columbia 50 Plus Center on Cradle Rock Way. And so the other thing that we do real quick is we manage 3 designations of sustainable communities in our county. We have one in Ellicott City, we have one in North Laurel Savage, and we have one in Long Reach. What do those mean? No, they're not environmental places. They are state designations for money. So this is redevelopment areas that receive special, they have the opportunity to get special grants and special funding for those particular areas of Ellicott City, North Laurel Savage, and Long Reach. And then we also run the Route 1 tax credit program. So $250,000 every year. We have to go for reauthorization next year, but businesses get a tax credit up to $100,000 to do facade work. And so that's upgrades to their buildings, their properties, lighting, signage, you name it. So, and these are all just Route 1 facing properties. So that is another project that we work on. If you want to know more about us, visit our webpage. We're community planning under the planning page. So,
All right,
good to
thanks,
see you guys.
Kristen.
Yep.
Thank you. And actually, Chad, I forgot to mention him, Chad Edmondson, Division Chief of Engineering and Development. Chad, did you have anything? Yep, he's going to come back up.
Wait.
James kept saying it was really interesting and fun and all that, but there's formats he was showing you, they're so interesting and fun. I walk around carrying them with me all the time. But they are really helpful. So, if you ever take the time and actually go through them, I'm gonna talk about 4 topics. They're either new, or there's been some issues, or, just clarifications of future changes. And what I'll do is, if you don't mind, let me go through the whole topic, and then I'll ask you if you have any questions, and then you can fire away, and then I'll move on to the next one. So, first one is red lines in P-Docs. As James says, we brought them into P-Docs. I don't have any slides, so that's not me. But what I want to do is I want to walk through just like the basic steps of getting through it. So, you guys submit a red line. In the past, you walked in here with 4 copies red lined up, and you just drop in a box right over there with a check, and away you go. It seems like it was really efficient. But we then sent it out to folks, and it went by snail mail, or somebody came and picked it up out of a box, and it sat for a couple of days. Now you'll come in, you'll submit it. We will check and make sure you have owner's verification letters, everything electronic. We'll make sure that you understand there's a fee, and the next step takes into account the fee. It takes a day or two and a couple back and forth with buttons. So at the front end, it is longer, but at the back end, instead of coming in here and hand drafting and doing things like checking them out and bringing them back in, it's actually clicks of a button. So it's much quicker at the end. We've had a couple glitches here that we're working through to make it all come together. And I've been signing originals right and left for red line. So the pace has really picked up. Step 1, you make your request. You submit your information. We go through verifications and permissions. The next step will be to submit for a cost estimate. Now, every plan that comes in should have a cost estimate associated with it. It's the standard F or SDP cost estimates you've all been using for the past 20 years. As Linda said, if the cost is under $4,000, that works out to the approximate 5% fee that you guys would pay normally if you did an SDP or an F. Then if it's less than that, it's $200, just like before. If it's more than that, then you go down to the FECC line, final estimate construction cost. That's your total construction cost based on unit prices. And right below that is the balance fee due, or the BFD, and that's the 5% cost. That's your cost. So if you're doing a red line to the SDP, you'll go into the SDP estimate, 11 by 17, 11, 8.5 by 14, and you'll use that. It could be different depending on the size of your red line if you're doing an F plan. So if you're submitting an SDP, use that one. If you're submitting an F, use the F format. The fee now is based on the new costs. Here's one of the strange ones. Let's go with the task. You guys submit a change in use. A change in use is pretty much changing a parking tabulation and some names on there. There's really no construction cost. So do you need to submit an estimate? No. Put together a little email, attach it when it comes in and saying it's a change in use. We're not doing any construction. Jeff Pickett, my guy in DED, will get it. We've been through this already. We got it down. There's no construction cost, $200 fee. We move on. Otherwise, you submit the cost estimate. Let's say it's for $10,000. But let me go to a good example. We've had this already. So let's say your change is you got a storm drain that goes from point A to B to C. And then you make some changes to your site and go, gosh, I can go from point A right to point C. So I just knocked off 300 feet of storm drain. So what's my construction cost estimate? It's less. What do I up? I don't know if that's where you were going or not.
Kind of.
Okay. So it's the actual amount is less, but we're still reviewing your hydraulics, your storm drain, your profile, the plan view, the setbacks. We're still sending it to DLD and possibly DPW if there's a conflict with public utilities and easements. I think what we really would be looking for is something that makes sense. Oh, I know you didn't want me to say that, but something that makes sense. If you had 300 feet of pipe and now you have 200 feet of pipe, I think what would make sense is, what are we reviewing? We're reviewing 200 feet of pipe. So make that your cost estimate. It shouldn't be $200. It shouldn't be $2,000. So when you put it in, if it's a couple hundred feet and you apply 5%, you're probably going to get a $400 or $500 estimate. If it makes sense, we're going to take it. Jeff Pickett and I have already had that conversation. If in doing that you need a waiver from Anthony to go into the buffers, and he says no, and now you have to build a $40,000 retaining wall, we're now gonna review that. That's in the process, so you've resubmission of that red line, so there may be an additional fee. I'm not saying, hope it doesn't happen, but it could happen, so there's gonna be additional fee. But as long as it makes sense, use our cost estimate as the guideline and get it into us. If you have a question, you think it's too much, shoot me an email. We'll start with an email, see if it makes sense where we're going. The best example so far is the storm drain point A, B, C. That's the best one so far. We've had some others, but we're not going to nickel and dime you. If I'm not going to look at it and go, oh no, it's 38 linear feet, not 36 linear feet. So as long as it makes sense, we're going to take it and move on. The plans will be uploaded in PDOS, just like you guys have all done before. They will be plans with black lines with red changes, just like you did before. Here's the difference. All plan submissions will include the cover sheet. We've had situations back with my predecessor where sheet number 4 got changed in 2001. It was revision number 1 on sheet 4. 2 years later, sheet number 6 gets changed. It's the first revision on sheet number 6. So guess what revision number they applied to it? Number 1. Then I'm sitting in front of a BA case being appealed because they're saying, how can there be 2 revisions to the same plan set that are years apart? So from this point on, we're gonna keep track that if it's the first revision to the set, regardless of what sheet, it's number 1. Regardless of what sheet, the next one in is number 2. Here's why you're submitting the cover sheet. Your cover sheet will keep that updated. And we will tell you by Jeff Pickett checking in the database whether you're doing revision 3 or revision 4. See how easy we made it for you? You don't even have to verify it yourself. We will tell you this is revision 4 or 5 or 6. So that will help out. Legibility.
That's existing projects, and because obviously the old process, we may be on 12 and we don't know it.
Correct. So
You'll let us know.
So we will tell you with that second button push that comes back to you, it will be part of that information when it comes back from Jeff. Revision legibility, in the old days, you do hand drafting. We never saw it. You came in with your old speed memo, which we still have, it looks different. But you come in with that speed memo, you take it down, carry downstairs. We never saw it. I see it now. If it looks like 3rd grade scribble, you're gonna get a text, email from me, sorry, you'll get an email from me going, no, we're not taking that, so, you're all professionals, make it look good, make sure you're doing it in CAD anyway, so white out the box, put in the new number, keep it legible. So that's all I should have to say about that, it's keep it professional. Digital files will be submitted, you'll get the speed memo like before. There is a print fee for Mylars, $5. It will be on the speed memo. That's a slight change, but it'll be on there. We've changed that memo. It looks really good. When you submit the plans, convert them to monochrome because each sheet should have the revision triangle, whether it's revision 4, 5, or 6, next to that revision, and it should have it on the cover sheet as well as where the actual change is. But change it to monochrome so everything's black. Great, we can see it. Yellows and greens, we just can't see it. It's very hard to see. And Lisa's giving me, she's either telling me there's a shark or, but she's saying compress the file. Is that the right word? Flatten the file before you uploaded it because of memory and it goes through the system better. So flatten the file. Thank you. Engineer, as usual, will seal all the sheets. Don't get rid of any old seals. Just go ahead, Frank will just go ahead and stamp his with a new one. Then if it's a new sheet, a brand new sheet that was never there, it will go through the signature process for the 3 signatures. If it's an SDP, let's say. If it's an old sheet, number 1, the cover sheet's an old sheet. You made the changes to it, seal that sheet. Then in DocuSign, my initials will go right next to yours. So that's your confirmation that when it was approved, because in DocuSign, it got clicked. Every sheet will get a click, whether it's a brand new one for the 3 signatures or at least an initial from me if it's an old sheet. Here's the initial program used. Lastly, as far as the program, let me read this because this gets into computer stuff. And I'm not a computer person. The program used to upload your sheets must be compatible with our process. DocuSign has been very successful. We've been using DocuSign. We have had issues with Adobe Pro. So we're not telling you which program to use, but it's got to be compatible so that we can do our last few steps and get them uploaded and back down to Terry. So with red lines, any questions? Chris?
Hand drafting. So are we still hand drafting?
Yes. So cover sheet, great example of hand drafting is revision number 6. You go to that little revision block, you put your triangle, you write a nice description, and I'm a word person, just basic words in there. And then you'll seal that sheet. You can hand draft it. So you'll get the files online, don't have to go down there. Get the files online, go ahead and upload them however you magically do it in CAD. If Heather were here, she would be laughing at me right now. Then put in your revision. You can hand draft it and then scan it or put it in using CAD. Then it will be uploaded into the files for PDF for signature file. And then those go to DocuSign. I'm dumbing it down to my level. And then it gets sent to us. Lisa sends it to us, or maybe Jeff Pickett will be sending the red lines to me for signature as well as Linda and Anthony. So hand drafting is still permitted.
So we're not picking Mylars up and hand drafting and
Nope. Then they make it downstairs, they get rescanned, and we've got a log of them based on dates. That's why that cover sheet is so important. Any other questions? Okay, we move on next one.
Oh, good, yeah, keep going.
Speed studies. There will be changes to speed studies. DPW is going to do it. I can't tell you when. They're going to ask for a 24-hour count. So I don't know the catalyst for that. I don't know how you do it. I think you hook the boxes of the timer on a tree and you run them across the tubes and it'll give you a speed study. Again, I don't know why. But in the meantime, I went back and I looked at volume 3 for the first time ever. And it is very ambiguous. So this is what we're looking for. The speed study size should be about 50 cars in each direction. How do you get 50 cars? There's going to be situations if you're at the end of Old Rover Road and it's like a driveway, you're going to get, 10 cars. You're out there for a couple hours and it gets crazy. But you're shooting for 50 cars. If you get your 50 cars, set them up in your fastest to slowest, come up with your 85th percentile, there you have your speed study. If you can't get your 50 cars and you got 8 cars, set it up in your 85th percentile, fastest, slowest, come up with it. Not a very good data set. Then what I think we should do, and might get some pushback, we've talked about it, but you're not following the current regulations because we didn't get a good data. Submit for a waiver. Therefore, I have a mechanism to get it down to DPW. When you submit for that waiver, because you only counted 8 cars, take the posted speed plus 5, whichever of the two, the 8 car 85th percentile versus the posted plus 5, whichever one's greater, use that, make that your waiver request. That's what we do right now. When DPW comes back and makes it a 24-hour count, then we'll go with that. I guess you guys will have some input at that time. Any questions on that?
I just have a question back on the red lines. So we're not picking up the originals any longer and erasing and redrafting and scanning and bringing those back.
You don't have to do that. That is correct.
Okay.
You can get them online. Electronic copy.
I just picked up one Friday and they gave me the Mylar set. So am I not supposed to hand draft that?
You can. So you made the extra effort, I'll call it, from coming in here, getting those original. I'm told that anything that's downstairs you can get online, which would have the latest seals, just like what you picked up.
Okay.
So if for some reason it's not online, which it should be, then you would come in and pick it up just like you did.
Okay.
Chris?
So how did you pick them up? If you didn't get the memo that said you had permission to go down with Mylars.
I do have the memo. And
How did you get that?
Through P-Docs.
Jeff Pickett.
And it may have been the old,
Yeah.
because we're in the middle of transitioning between the old red line and the ones we started before the PDOC's red line, we completed the previous way.
So I think that's actually a good point. Any of your submissions that were made before June 28th, they still use the previous workflows, templates, and processes. Any of the submissions that you've made since June 28th, those all follow our new process, new workflows. Nothing that existed previously was transitioned into the new workflows. They all just exist in their, whatever their state was at that time.
So even the oldest of F plans should be available online.
Jennifer shaking her head.
It was supposed to come out.
So then we're manipulating PDFs at that point, not CAD drawings.
Does that sound right, PDFs? Does to me.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
so when you're saying the oldest of F plans, some of them are not in project docs, right? Like, I mean, we had a lot of plans that were submitted before project docs was ever a thing. So those aren't necessarily, I guess,
But they
we
would
have,
be scanned by Terry.
right. So we have those scanned available. It's just, they're not going to be searchable through project docs, though there will be digital versions of them available.
Does that make sense?
Well, my question was, is that when we were hand drafting, we were taking an eraser and erasing a Mylar sheet and then redrafting onto that. But you're saying now there's gonna be a scanned PDF, so we're gonna get that scanned PDF, and then we're going to be electronically altering the PDF, not necessarily the hand drafting, the Mylar,
That's how most folks have been doing it.
okay?
You could go downstairs, check out the Mylar, I don't know how you do this, and then grind it off with a hand eraser that you guys told me it was getting harder and harder to get those supplies. Hand draft it on, then scan it, and then submit it electronically to us, then bring the original back. So you could do it that way. And there may be a scenario where for some reason it's not scanned or not legible that was scanned or something, but let's go with 99% of them are, get the scanned copy and manipulate.
Yeah, it's just the manipulation within the PDF that's gonna be a little bit new and different and a skill set we're gonna have to hone up on.
Yes.
In the case where we're redlining a plan that you guys don't have available in digital, will you guys then scan it in, or do you want us to go downstairs, pick up the original, we can scan it in and then make adjustments to the PDF?
That's a good question. So I would say you could pick it up and do the scanning. And then we would just, as before, just make sure what you are submitting to us matches up with what we had previously. Now, Terry, if you ask Terry to do it, Terry will scan it. So I haven't had that situation occur yet, but Terry will scan it for you. If it's not in there, just for some reason it never got scanned, and then you'll get the digital copy. The reason I say that is, now you don't have to make the trip here. So I think a telephone conversation for, F68, some F plan from the 60s, you would go ahead.
So in summary, unless you really like
Driving.
erasing stuff and hand doing stuff, then we're okay to do it PDF. Okay.
Chad, just to piggyback on that, if you find a plan that's not scanned that we have here in our possession, I believe we want Terry to scan it before we send the only copy of that plan out into the world.
Be a good idea.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, so I think that the only change makes sense. If you find something that's unscanned, we have it here, I'm certain Terry will be more than happy to.
I think you probably require that you scan it, so that's gonna be the course of action. So if you find some anomaly like that, we'll go ahead and scan it regardless, so. And that way, if you want it digital, we'll just give it to you.
Sounds like fun work.
Also, if you cannot find it on the interactive map, it doesn't mean we don't have it digitally. Just some of the really old 1970s, early 80s may not be on the interactive map, so you can always call us and check. Terry has a lot.
There's a lot done.
Last question. Replacement sheets. Those still Mylar get submitted on Mylar,
All electronic.
all electronic, okay.
We are moved completely to an electronic format, yeah. All right.
So,
'Cause there's-
so
oh,
the last,
sorry.
and I'll make it super
No,
quick.
you keep going.
So, so the last couple things, comments been coming back from DPW on the speed counts. If you don't want to get comments, I've been trying to run some interference, but not always successful. Make your counts, don't make your counts on Mondays or Fridays. Any other day would be great. Make sure schools are in full session. So if you're doing it on June 15th, and seniors are gone, probably won't want to count. Even though schools are in session, you probably won't want to count because they're coming back with comments saying that's reducing traffic. So just those couple little items. Lastly, ECPs, if you have an ECP that's in and it's ECP 25 anything, then it is now being submitted electronically. So, and there's you'll get the letter from us. You'll see our old ECP letter. It's going to be a little different, and it will have the cost, the $5 cost per sheet fee built into it. Any other questions? I'm getting the hook.
Really quick,
You are getting up now.
will you have any sort of public facing database for those speed studies?
We do not have that at this time, and I don't know if DPW has tracked them. So I know they go out and do their own speed counts. But we don't put it public, that information.
I'd rather not, because then other engineers will use their engineers and information.
Awesome. Thank you, Chad. I appreciate it. All right, so
Sure.
Andrew. Yeah.
Linda mentioned it before, but we are undertaking our landscape manual overhaul. So there was an email blast that went out to some of the development community, hopefully all the development community, but in the event that you did not get an email today, I'm personally inviting you or a rep, or if you hire somebody who used to work for DPZ, who might have a really great insight onto landscape manual, to send that rep. We have a series of focus groups that are kicking off. We're doing internal agency one, the development community, which is you all. We're having a specific focus group with individuals at 2 p.m. on September 24th here in this room. I think we're also going to have a web component, but we'd love for you to participate in person. Our consultant will be here. We're using site resources to help gather information and data. We also have an email, landscape manual, howardcountymd.gov. If you can't be there or would like to send follow-up comments, we'd love to receive them. We're gathering, like I said, as much as possible to then sort of work with our consultant to rewrite. I can't guarantee you'll get everything you asked for, but I can guarantee that we are looking to vet it. So if you have specific insight, great. If you have sort of broad, like how is solar going to work with X, Y, or Z, those kinds of questions are also really helpful because it'll help direct our consultant into what kind of information we need to update, but also need to
Thank you,
investigate.
So do you have a webpage?
Yep, it is live.
Yes, it is live.
It just went live. It's pretty basic, but what it will do is be a sort of repository for information. So as we get meeting minutes from the focus groups, we'll put them up there. The draft we put up there. So it all went out in the email blast. But again, if you did not get it, I just lost my date. September 24th, 2 p.m. here in this room. We'd love to have you or your representative for as many people as possible. There will be a third public focus group, which will be also in this room, I think. That'll be 7 p.m. on Tuesday, October 1st. You're also welcome to come to that one, but special one for the development community. In an attempt to try to streamline projects as they're coming through, just to highlight a few things that I know my team is going to start looking a little bit closer at. Title blocks. All of our checklists say put the title block in the lower left-hand corner. And we really need to start doing that in a more productive way as we have been racing through electronic signatures, and we often have other folks from other divisions helping us load those electronic signatures and add signatures. When that title block for signatures begins to float all around the pages and not become evident where that is, they are often getting missed, and then we're rerunning through DocuSign and having to restart the process. And so I've directed my team to start checking as early on as possible to make sure that those title blocks are in the lower left-hand corner so that they are consistent. consistent, so they meet our checklist, and so that they can effectively get you signed plans sooner. Because if there's one person holding out on a DocuSign and realize there's a block missing somewhere else, with one individual, we gotta start all over. So and help us help you get things done quicker. I try to get those title blocks in the lower left. That's where comments from BuilderDeveloper are coming from. As mentioned, after the June 28th deadline, the new workflows that we were processing had electronic signatures added to their workflow process. You'll start receiving, as those plans work through the electronic signature process, you'll notice in PDocs notifications related to that piece of it. If you recall everything before then, we were routing through DocuSign outside of PDocs and then sort of collecting PDocs and running through, and there was no update, and sometimes you get things back. As more plans come in under the new system, you'll notice the notifications for the electronic signature process as part of that. Just a reminder, if there are corrections that need to be made to your plans, you will get the flag notification in PDocs. I think there's one reminder set for 4 days later to remind you that you had corrections to be made. But after that, PDocs, I don't believe is going to send you the automatic reminders. It'll come up in your task list. But if there are corrections, so if we send it back for corrections to be made to the final drawings, the flag is there in PDocs, but I think you only get one reminder. Just that little piece, a general reminder that after the TC letter, if there are outstanding comments, there's 2 weeks for them to be expressed. Again, in an effort to make sure that you're keeping the plans rolling at the end of the cycle and getting you into signatures as quickly as possible. If there were PDocs comments, our TC letter says you have 2 weeks to resolve them. Those really need to be stuck to so that you can upload your final drawings. You can upload those emails saying you've resolved this with agency X, Y, and Z, and then intake can go smoothly. And then if there are questions about fees on the TC letter, please reach out to the DLD reviewer if there's confusion. We hate to get to the day of submission and there's a fee that was miscalculated or off, or there's a question about, and then we're sort of both frantically going back and forth trying to get checks in. So if there are questions or if you want to confirm, please reach out directly to the reviewer with the appropriate TC letter, walk you through that. And then just a reminder for forest conservation plans that the law says they must be prepared by. And so we really need that preparer's signature on those sheets at submission, and can't wait till the very end of the process for signatures. Forest Con says prepared by, we need to start confirming that they're being prepared by the appropriate individuals. So those are the plans, reviews, updates. Great. Good question. Landscape manual, please participate. We really want as much feedback as possible.
No, thank you, Anthony. I think Anthony said a key thing, help us help you. So the better the plans are when they come in for initial submission, the less review time it'll take for us and the quicker we can turn around getting the items back to you. So with that, Beth, go ahead and talk a little bit about our seeding.
Yeah, actually, Linda, your introduction was spot on, so I don't have a lot to say. I won't take much time. I'm Beth Burgess with Resource Conservation Division. My work program does not often overlap with a lot of your efforts in the county, as great as both all efforts are. But I will share in the PDocs review area, where I see most of you is with historic pres. So if you have a historic structure on your property, especially if you're demolishing it, there's a different route, but you should just talk to me up front. We want to, anyone who has an SDP, submitting an SDP and has an historic structure, it'll need to come through my division. So we want to see if you're demolishing it. If you're demolishing it, it goes through a historic demolition clearance before it goes to DILT for permits. And Ken Short, our architectural historian, will review that. That fee, it did not increase. It's still $250 for principal dwelling and $50 for every outbuilding structure. So that did not increase in this process this year. But in addition to, if you are impacting that historic structure in any way with an SDP, it will come to Historic Preservation Commission for advisory comments, and I will work with you for that process. And I think most of you are familiar with that, but that's just a reminder of probably my largest role with the developers and what your efforts are. We also handle the environmental aspects, and like Linda said, Susan Overstreet retired in end of May, and we are posting for job position as a planner 3. So environmental planner 3 coming hopefully soon to us this fall. We'll start interviews probably this fall. And that person will resume the role that I'm trying to patch and cover for green infrastructure network work and the green neighborhoods. So that's an important role. And then finally, with AgPres, we really don't work a lot with you because this is land and preservation, but you will hear from us if you're working with commercial solar on AgPres and or lots, unrestricted lots, individual lots. So not a whole lot of things, but if you ever want to reach out to me, just call me directly and I'd be happy to talk to you.
Great, thank you, Beth. Appreciate it. Any questions? All right, Jeff Burnett?
Good afternoon. So as you learned, Research Division is manages project docs. Thank you, James, for working on that. It was probably the biggest upgrade since we initiated this about 12 years ago. We started using it in 2012, and so adding the red lines and adding the waiver petitions and upgrading the processes has been a huge effort. So we really appreciate your patience with that. PDocs is not James' day job. His day job is a land use manager, so he maintains the land use database, which is what we use in the research division to track all the development that comes through. So every year we publish a DMS report, which is online now. We'll be starting to work on that for 2024 shortly. Probably the only other pertinent thing relative to this group or important to this group is the APFO task force, which you may or may not have known has started. We had our kickoff meeting about 2 weeks ago. Another meeting tonight. It's streamed live, so please feel free to watch it.
Jeff, are they calling it something different?
Well, it's the APFO task force.
It seemed like they're,
Is it committee?
APFO committee.
Okay.
yeah, it didn't seem to have the task force name out.
Right. And you
No,
were-
it's
you were on the
technically
last-
committee, APFO committee, so yes, you're good call, yep.
Right.
But it's the same thing.
There's,
Same
and this time around, you were on the task force last time.
Right.
So this time around, the committee has 15 people. It's prescribed by the APFO ordinance that we formed. It's appointed by the county executive and county council. They have up to a year to come up with recommendations. The first part of our presentations are education, so we're going to be educating the committee on all things APFO. And then, of course, we're going to request that they look at it in detail and suggest changes based on the new phone. Hopefully it's not a project doc.
Systems down.
So, yeah, please stay tuned to that. And there will be a public hearing as well.
Yeah,
The first in the fall, I think.
Yep, so I was gonna touch on that a little bit when we're
Okay.
done, just gonna update them on APFO and housing affordability with the governors.
Yes.
Does anybody on the committee actually have any experience with that phone?
Yes, we had 2 people that were on our prior APFO committee, Brett Lovelace and Lisa Markovitz.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So it's really well balanced. So just to kind of piggyback on what Jeff said, since it seems to be the discussion point now, I was going to kind of close with this. So as Jeff said, we started our APFO committee. The first meeting was 2 weeks ago on August 28th. This is our second meeting is tonight. Most of the meetings will be virtual. So the meeting is from 6 to 8 p.m. It'll be streamed live. And as Jeff had said, the first series of meetings now through December are going to be education. We're going to go over the history of APFO, the history of Howard County, kind of talking about what our demographics are looking like, what our schools are looking like, what our level of service for our roads are looking like, and then some of the new things that we've been talking about. Complete streets, how does that integrate in with adequate public facilities? And then talking to some other local jurisdictions that have changed how they've done APFO, for instance, Montgomery County and Anne Arundel County, bringing them in to talk about what makes sense for Howard County. I'm talking about the allocation charts as well. And I know we just adopted a general plan that has them, kind of talking about the validity of those still moving forward. So all things for growth and public facilities within Howard County we're touching on. Starting in January, then we'll look at recommendations moving forward, what makes sense. So as Jeff had alluded to, the ordinance for the adequate public facilities ordinance committee was very prescribed on how we stood up the committee with specific membership. So each council member got 2 representatives. It's all codified. The county executive has 3, and then 1 from Board of Education, 1 from Howard County Public Schools, with 15 members in totality. And then changing some of the rules and procedures from supermajorities and things like that will be discussed tonight. To talk about how they will be voting on these recommendations, and the ultimate goal is to have a report that will go to the county executive and county council to see how they would like to change, if at all, the actual ordinance and how it is utilized in Howard County. So that's the end goal for all of this. Hoping to have something in May. We're going to have 2 public hearings. The first public hearing will be November 6th, the day after Election Day. So that's our gift to everyone. Then you can come in and complain or vet or whatever you want to say about APFO. That will be in person. We're still determining the location because I will guarantee you will not be here. We do not have space available that evening and this facility or any evening really coming up. So we'll be somewhere else. Maybe looking at the 50+ center, we're going to see where we're going to be able to host that, but that'll be the first public hearing. The idea of that public hearing is to hear from you all, the public, the building community, the citizenry, on APFO early, so we can hear what your thoughts are. So as the group moves forward with their discussions, they have some touch points from the community about what your concerns are and how you would like to see this committee move forward with its recommendations. Then after the draft recommendations are published, again, we'll have a second public hearing. Both of those are required by county ordinance. So we'll hear from you at the end of the process, like, hey, is this good or not? Do you like the direction or not? What are your thoughts? Tell us more before we finalize the report to take to county council and county executive's office. So it's the timing and kind of the work plan. Jeff is going to be instrumental in providing a lot of his knowledge and expertise in data. So yes, Jeff was also here before as well. So.
And there's a good opportunity for real change with this committee because the general plan says the land use situation in Howard County is changing dramatically. There's not much land left. So it's a redevelopment paradigm. So that's really one thing that the APFO committee is going to be looking at. And that's why Montgomery County is important to have them here. They've gone through the same thing, redevelopment, mixed use development. So the goal is to kind of introduce that to the current community.
They do every 4 years.
But it was a conscious decision that no one from the chamber and no one from the business community would be included.
So it was codified. The code basically says the county council selects X number of people in the county council.
The county executive or the county council wouldn't be expected to include a business community.
But I will tell you, I mean, please watch, and it does seem pretty fair and balanced with the dichotomy of people that are on the committee. I think last week was 2 weeks ago was a great meeting, and so still more to come. Yes.
Jeff, on the research, the development side, I believe there was a bill that was passed in the state legislature. I think it was HB 131 that talked about counties or cities that meet a certain population threshold, providing development data, permits and so forth. Are you aware of that? And is that reporting requirement going to starting soon? Or are you aware of what that's going to look like?
I mean, I'm vaguely aware of it, but we didn't pay much attention to it because we already provide a lot of information for development monitoring report. So on the research division website, there is a link to this DMS report. So one of the things the research division does is track development as it comes through, and we put together this annual report. So I think that's.
Yeah, I think it's the annual planning report required by the Maryland Department of Planning, which again, as Jeff said, we already do those metrics under our DMS report. So it really wasn't applicable to Howard County, but it's just, again, reporting on all of the development activity that has happened within that jurisdiction during that calendar year timeframe. How many units have been built, annexations, if you have the municipalities, zoning changes, things like that.
Thanks.
There was something that was just released. Was it like an APFO update or something? I remember Calvin Ball sent something out and I looked at something that said like numbers.
Maybe just announcing the committee members that was released probably the early part of August. So it was announcing one of the committee was starting and then the membership, which is also all posted on the APFO webpage as well.
Okay.
Yeah, so on the TPC website, you can see, and it's also live streamed, and it's recorded as well. So if you don't like to get watch it.
Right, so last but not least from, I'm sorry, Jeff, thank you, Jeff. Not to rush you off because I still want to make sure we give time to DILP and DPW, but we have Peter Conrad from zoning. I forgot to mention him earlier, I apologize. So zoning division, he is our planning supervisor and he's standing in for Jeff Goins, who is our chief of zoning research or public service, sorry.
I think everything was pretty much covered already with the PDOCs. What we've added to PDOCs are the 11 most common zoning petitions that are they're either being heard by the division or going to the hearing examiner or are going over to the council or the zoning board. So any type of an appeal is still done administratively just through an editable PDF. So it's really only the zoning appeals that have agency review and comment that are going to be going through PVIs. I guess the only other news from zoning is that recently, if you need to research historic zoning maps, we do have an application now that has historic zoning. So if you're working on non-conforming use applications or petitions, or you need to research previous zoning categories or maps, that's available online as well.
It's a really great tool. It goes back to our original zoning maps, and they scan them all in and try to clean them up as best they could to see
Yeah.
the line work. So it's a really great tool. I utilize it a lot. So yeah, I think that's a perfect example of the use of that tool and how valuable it is for sure.
They hook to the interactive map or the zoning?
It's a freestanding historic zoning map. I think Lisa's gonna.
Yeah, try to just
Look
show an
for it.
example.
I'm sorry.
Can you open it up? for
The
us?
historic zoning map.
I have booted,
Yeah.
in my computer.
But it has most of the tools that are in the interactive map. We just felt that it
It's a
really needed
separate
its own freestanding app. So it's based on the same interface.
It's
You
under
can look
the
up
zoning
that property.
It's under the zoning section, or where do you find it?
This is gonna
It's
show
in the
us.
same interactive section.
They're not interactive because we didn't digitize them in. They're a static map.
But-
But you can pull up and zoom in and zoom out though. That type of interactivity. Here we go.
So okay, so it is hooked to the interactive map.
No, that's historic sites.
Right?
No, just gonna-
Yeah.
It's somewhere on there, huh?
I think it's under the thing. Yeah.
Which one is it under here?
Well, it's its own freestanding. I'm not
I
sure.
think you go to zoning division.
Yeah. It might even be just on the what's new.
Zoning regulations and maps.
Should be there. So we'll make sure there's a.
And then it's on the first thing. It says historic zoning map. Let's scroll down.
There it is.
Got it.
Not gonna lie, our webpage is very challenging at times, even for us. We've even tried to make
So
it
this,
more
it's really a guide, so it's, it's got disclaimers on it, obviously, because these are scanned, very old scanned maps. But it gives you a good sense of, an initial research cut as to what were some of the former zoning categories for the particular property.
But they would be the version not originally adopted, but as amended until you got
Correct.
to the next one.
Yes. Former planning director would definitely know.
Yes,
Yeah.
special guest appearance.
It was still a question.
That's
Well,
good.
we did our best to get, we clipped the legends out of some of the older ones, so, many of them are in black and white, so they're a little bit harder to read. But obviously, the hard copies are still available should anybody need to come into the office.
Great, thank
Okay.
you, appreciate it, Peter. And with that, Bob and Don, do you have anything you want to share? Outside of planning and zoning for anything building, you see these two gentlemen and their team a lot, so appreciate you all being here today.
And for those who don't know me, I'm Bob Francis, I'm the Director of Inspection License and Permits. I'm gonna give you a quick update on where we're at and some of the things that are going on, and Don is here to basically correct me after I get done talking. First things, we talk about fees, you probably haven't noticed it, but our fees did go up, they haven't gone up in over 30 years. Building permit fee went from, on a residential, went from 18 cents a square foot to 25 cents a square foot. And the 22 cent for commercial, went from 22 cents a square foot to 30, massive increase. Pales in comparison to some of the other fees that are associated, that are not necessarily built fees, but that we're responsible for collecting. So that's out there. Most of the other things I'm gonna mention here all have an underlying energy sort of theme to them. We have updated we updated to the 2021 international codes a while back, which included the 2021 International Energy Conservation Code. We adopted that. Now, the state of Maryland says we have to adopt these things, and certain things we can't change. Energy code is one of them. Can't change it. So we adopted the 21 code, but at the time the state had the 18. So we can't do anything that's more restrictive or less restrictive or whatever from the state's 2018 code. So when we adopted the 21 code, we had some local amendments that allowed certain things to happen. For example, you didn't have to go to R59 in the roof. You could keep it down at some of the lower numbers. The state went through the 2021 code adoption and review and legislative review process. Excuse me. And they actually adopted the 2021 code with what we call the Maryland Amendments. Howard County was very instrumental and involved with the Maryland Building Officials Association to attend some of the public hearings and advocate for some of those what we call Maryland Amendments. Because there are certain things that are specific to our area here. So anyway, the bottom line on that is that the state adopted the 2021 code that makes the 21 code with our local amendments pretty much look like what we've been doing since we adopted the 2021 code. Is that good? Yeah, pretty much. Right. A couple of tweaks here and there. Now that's all settled out and the dust is settling out on those sort of things. We're actually getting ready to start to look at our 2024 codes. And for those of you who are engaged with the legislative process, and again, if you're not, you need to do that. Go to the website, go to the county council website, look at current legislation, see what's going on, see what's being proposed and what's being talked about. I'm sure a lot of you are. But anything that we do and that we're going to be involved with going forward is going to be, manifesting itself there. Obviously we want to reach out to you and answer any questions you might have proactively, but we can't guarantee that we're going to get to everybody. So if we're going to be proposing something in the 2024 codes, you're certainly going to see this proposed legislation. With that in mind, there are a lot of folks out there that are pushing for electrification for all new buildings, whether it's all commercial, all residential, both, one or the other. We don't know what the specific legislation is going to look like, but the final editions of the 2024 International Energy Conservation Code and the Residential Code, which were both dependent on that final publication of the Energy Code, are now available and in print, and we're going to be starting our code review process on that. We're probably looking for some sort of introduction toward the end of this year. It certainly wouldn't be going into effect until after first of the 2025. So certainly you want to keep your eyes open for that. And again, somebody, I think it was Will Pittman, had asked me once when we went to the 21 code. Yeah, I know some of you are familiar with Council Bill 5. There are a lot of folks out there that thought Council Bill 5 is requiring electrification in all new buildings, and it wasn't. It was requiring a report. For those of you who might remember when we adopted the 2021 code, some folks testified saying, hey, why aren't we going for all electric and whatnot? And there was a last minute sort of amendment that didn't get any traction. Council Bill 5 was the council's attempt to basically say, give us some information on what it takes to require electrification moving forward so that they'll be better prepared for when we do adopt the 2024 codes. And that report was published and it's out there. And it follows along pretty much in line with what the state did as part of its Climate Solutions Now Act of the 2022 session. So that's going to be coming forward. Nobody ever comes and testifies to code adoptions ever, right? Except in 2021, some people did. And I guarantee you the 24 session is going to be much more engaged from the public than in the past. Given all that, I think it was after one of these things came up, I think it was Will Pittman who had asked me, he said, hey, let me ask you a question. If we're doing a building out in the west part of the county, there's no natural gas service out there anyway. Isn't that technically an all-electric development? And the answer is maybe not, right? All electrification doesn't mean just like, all your services are electrically supplied. There may be other requirements for example, I'm not saying this is being proposed one way or the other. For example, California adopted an all-electrification bill. It said that all new residential buildings have to have solar panels on the roof. Not solar ready, not solar if you want it as an option, but solar panels required. There are certain things in the 24 editions, in the appendices and optional items out there that are probably going to be discussed and talked about. Again, we don't have a finalized plan. We're just starting our 2024 code review process. So that's certainly something you want to be aware of and be engaged with, and make sure your voices are heard. And we'll go from there. Yeah.
I assume you're aware of the national level debate about FHA, VA requiring exceptions, no exceptions to the 2021 code. Just any opinions about that? I mean, obviously it's a federal and
well,
opinions or thoughts, I guess.
Not that they don't, or they did before, but elections matter. And so there's a lot of discussion about what this Congress does now. That if the election goes one way, the next Congress may say, nope, we're not doing that, and it kind of reverts back. Where if it goes a different direction, they may mandate it. I mean, if the it wouldn't affect us directly, but if the federal government says you can't give an FHA loan unless you comply with
Part 59 in the roof.
all electric buildings, then that's not going to affect us directly, but certainly going to impact what you all provide to us for review and approval. The good news on that is that I think the federal level, they're still talking about the 15 or the 18 codes, not even the 21 or 24 codes, which have a lot more requirements and not. Yeah, there's a lot going on.
There's supposed to be a pathway in the 24 code to do what we started doing in the 21 code.
Let's hope. Hope it's not too complicated.
That I can't promise.
I can't be the only question. Right?
Thank you so much.
I thought that was getting ready to ask something, and she's like, no,
Just thinking, pondering. I wasn't sure, is anyone from DPW here? That one, okay. Oh, yeah, did you have something you wanted to add, or?
Yeah, actually, I do have one more thing. A code that the state has put out there before, it wasn't mandatory adoption, is the International Green Construction Code, which is kind of like an add-on. It's called a stretch code. We haven't adopted that in the past. That's probably something that's going to be coming our way as well. So if you're not familiar with the IGCC, you might want to take a look at that. Some of the things that we've been doing in Howard County, as far as like the green neighborhoods and things of that nature, some of those aspects are already going to be in there. IGCC makes it more of a model code perspective rather than something that we did homegrown. And again, we've gotten away from our homegrown codes as other codes and standards become available.
Wonderful, thank you.
I can add something real quick.
Yeah, please. And I'm sorry we're running a little over. I do want to add, come on up. I want to add a little bit of time for questions at the end. If there are any additional.
I'm Christine Lowe. I'm with the Howard County's Stormwater Management Division, and I am the person who's been receiving the digital submittals for the digital storm drain data submittals. Thank you all for sending that information. That goes a long way to helping the county keep up with our asset management for all the stormwater VMPs and storm drains and inlets and all things. I will say that that process and the spreadsheet that you've been submitting is based on a database that MDE has required us to submit in specific formats. MDE has updated that database, and the counties are mandated to now submit in this new format. We are hopefully going to be rolling out our new internal geodatabase for maintaining all that information this calendar year. And so that means there probably will be some changes to the digital submittal templates. Maybe by the January meeting, we'll have a draft of that and can share with you all. It's not major changes. It's just they've got things in different tables and feature classes and things like that. So very similar information to what you've been sending, just some tweaks on which tabs things will be on in those spreadsheets. But that's it. It's just thanks everyone for sending that information. It's super helpful.
Well, thank you. Thank you to everyone for presenting. Are there any other items from the floor or any other questions?
Yes. A question in general, as everything's rolling over to electronics, is there any talk of payment being done electronically?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's something we've, reached out to finance about and then the ultimate, deciders on whether we move in that direction. But it's something that we understand is needed and we want to move forward with. It's just gonna be a matter of time. So hopefully that's something we can, begin to incorporate in our work plans. It's so silly to not be able to do that. So, no, absolutely. So just a couple parting thoughts I want to leave you all with today. First and foremost, thank you all for being here. I hope you really found this helpful. We want to continue to do these quarterly. I think you all showing up is going to continue to help us keep rolling with this. Our next meeting will be January 6th and it will be in person again. I think that works well for this. If you find that you want to do this virtually, just let us know. We're receptive to anything, but at least since we were kicking this off again, we wanted to have it in person. I wanted you all to meet the great staff that we have working behind the scenes and put faces with the names or divisions. So that's why I had some of the other divisions you don't really touch base with that often here today. You may not see them again unless there's something that they want to bring forward to you because it's really pertinent to what you all do. When we have our January meeting, we will be bringing you an update on the adequate public facilities ordinance committee. And also we will be bringing you an update about how Howard County will be applying the governor's housing package. We just went through a series of meetings with Department of Housing and Community Development. They were reaching out to local jurisdictions, kind of telling them the guidance on how to apply the governor's housing package. We do have many areas in Howard County that will qualify for this package, which has to do with our TODs, our nonprofit lands. We do not have any fully state-owned land, but we do have those other categories. So we'll be working through how we're going to implement that policy moving forward because it does, again, preempt local land use authority. So be looking for that in January. In the meantime, if there's something that you want us to bring to you, please, when we send out our email reminder, send us an email saying, hey, I'd like to hear from this group. I know Office of Community Sustainability wants to come and give you an update on some of that stuff, as well as our Department of Housing and Community Development want to update you on the MAHUs and MyTech. So they'll be coming to our next meeting as well. We just couldn't squeeze everyone in today. Anything else? All right. Thank you all for being here. Thank you to staff for presenting. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.